hello to anybody watching. We're just getting the camera and everything set up. If you're in the chat, there we go. If you're in the chat, let us know if you can hear us. Let's see. See it.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Philip Andrew Hamilton, and I am hoping to be your next senator for the Virginia's 11th Senate District, which goes from Baltimore County, Nelson County, and Louisa, as well as Amherst County. Well, let's start off tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance with the Communications Director of the Amherst County Republican Committee.
All right, everybody ready? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We truly are one nation under God, and many Republicans are still God-fearing individuals. You know, I actually was baptized at Baltimore Baptist Church just this Easter Sunday. And I've been a non-denominational Christian for about 20 years. But this year, it was this Senate campaign that compelled my faith to take a deeper dive. I see all the culture wars that are going on, not just in Virginia, but throughout the nation. And I think Christians and conservatives need to take a stand against the wokeness that's going on. And there are real life consequences to what's occurring. And Rachel, she's with Virginia Women Take Action. I got to meet her earlier this year. Happy to have the endorsement of her organization. But she's been fighting tooth and nail against this whole all this gender nonsense that's going on. In regards to our prisons, in regards to our schools, and many other institutions. And we should not have these pronouns as a protected within Virginia law. And they've been fighting for that, and I signed their candidate pledge. I want to bring Rachel onto the stage so she can discuss more about her organization, You Walk. Let's give a hand for Rachel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Okay, so as you said, my name is Rachel Twig, and I'm the director of a political action committee called Virginia Women Take Action. And our mission is to protect the rights and well-being of women and children by removing gender identity from Virginia laws. And so I'd like to speak for a few minutes about the harm that comes from making gender identity a protected characteristic in law, and focus a little bit on how that relates to stages law, because that's something else that we're discussing tonight. So, gender identity, as defined by the 2020 Senate Bill 868, also known as the 2020 Virginia Values Act, is gender-related identity, appearance, or other gender-related characteristics of an individual with or without regard to the individual's designated sex at birth. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but what it translates to is that men can identify as female and be granted access to women's bathrooms and locker rooms, as well as sports, domestic violence shelters, prisons, hospital wards, rehab centers, dormitories, and any other place that had been previously classified as female only. To say no to these men on the basis of their male sex is considered discrimination in Virginia law, and these businesses and nonprofit organizations risk being sued or losing state and federal funding. Gender identity teaches children that they could be born in the wrong body. And in order to be in the right body, they will need experimental, dangerous surgeries and a lifetime supply of synthetic hormones. Gender identity encourages commodification and objectification of our bodies. And what I mean by that is, instead of treating our bodies as whole and complete, we look at our bodies as a mishmash of parts. The parts that are wrong can be taken away and replaced with new purchase parts. This ideology has unfortunately taken hold in the mental health world. If someone was distressed about their body, a decent mental health therapist would try to find the root of that distress. People dissociate from their bodies, sometimes as a response to trauma. Some mental illnesses create confusion or disgust or anxiety around the body. Many young girls are afraid of puberty, and the thought of escaping womanhood through a male identity is appealing. And again, any decent mental health professional would help an individual find clarity, peace, and acceptance of their body. But once the words gender identity are uttered, the body becomes the problem, and the path to acceptance is extreme body modification. A therapist, and this is not hyperbole or anything up, a therapist can encourage teenage girls to have their breasts removed so that their bodies will match their so-called male gender identities. But if a therapist were saying to that same girl or any other girl, you are a girl, and being a girl is a great thing, your body is good, someday you will be a woman and you can be any kind of woman you want. Well, that would be considered conversion therapy, and it is illegal in Virginia. Parents who don't affirm their child's gender identity are considered abusive, and in some states can lose custody of their child. The final part that I want to explain about this ideology is that in order to accept it, we have to ignore our eyes, reality, and as women and girls, we often have to ignore our instincts and our boundaries. We are supposed to pretend that the man with long hair in a dress is actually a woman. For women and girls, we are supposed to let these men into our private spaces where we are undressed and vulnerable. We feel that it is wrong, we feel uncomfortable and afraid, but there's nothing that we can do because, again, telling men who identify as women that they do not enter female-only spaces is considered discrimination. Those of us who have spoken up have been called bigots, transphobes, prudes, people, and twerps. It's bad enough for adult women to deal with this, but what message are we sending to our daughters and young girls? We're telling them that their boundaries around their bodies don't matter, that they can't trust their own senses. They can't trust what their instincts are telling them. Amy Souza, an activist and important voice in this movement, said, "A movement that reaches to women and girls to trust what the strange man tells you about himself before trusting your own instincts is a predatory movement." And to come full circle back to Sage's law, predators prey on confusion, secrecy, and instability. They prey on those who have poor boundaries. Gender identity ideology erases boundaries for women and girls. It causes mental instability and confusion. It encourages secrecy and deception. It is a predator's game. Opponents of Sage's law and similar laws in other states have often said that we are potentially putting kids in danger by sharing their secret gender identities with abusive parents. But no one advocating for Sage's law has denied that there are abusive parents in the world. Some of us who've worked with survivors, maybe some of us in our own experiences, unfortunately know that abuse can come from parents. But what we are saying is that raising your child as their biological sex and not their so-called gender identity is not child abuse. We are saying that parents have a right to know what is happening with their children in school, and it is completely inappropriate for schools to keep parents in the dark about their own child's mental and physical health. Laws which protect gender identity conflict with the sex-based rights of women and girls and the well-being of children. So as a political action committee, we are fighting this at the legislative level. And so I'd like to close with a few things that you can do to help us if you're interested in helping us with our cause. First, you can vote for Blair if you live in the districts. We have signed our pledge and he supports our mission. He supports Sage's law. And this isn't necessarily an easy district, so please help him out, talk to your friends, spread the word, and find ways to support this campaign. If you don't live in this district, vote for candidates who do support our mission. And if you aren't sure, you can visit our website at virginiawomentakeaction.org and you can check out our list of other pledge signers. And you can vote for candidates who supported Sage's Law. I made some flyers back there that have a summary of Sage's Law with all of the candidates who voted for it, or all representatives who voted for it and against it. And a lot of them are running again for re-election this year. We also need volunteers who can help us spread our message, and I promise it's not too time-consuming or complicated. It's mostly hanging up flyers, sending some emails, making a few phone calls, going to some events and talking to people and trying to ask some questions. And if you've ever done anything like that before, that's okay. My team can coach you and help you out with that. You can also sign that petition there. This is a petition that we can show the legislators during legislative session to give them an idea of how many people support our mission. You can also make a donation if you'd like to get our message out on billboards, professional signs, radio ads, all kinds of stuff. We also like to host events, and it all costs money, so any contribution would be appreciated. And again, I just want to thank Phil again for sharing the stage with me and for Michele, because she uses our event too. And I'll be around for a while if you have any questions. So again, you can email me directly at vawomen-take-action@gmail.com or visit our website at virginiawomen-take-action.org.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. And her organization is actually a very new one. It started in March of this year, but she has accomplished so much in just the past few months. Let's give her another round of applause. And this is actually a very personal battle for me. And I'll tell you all why. I actually used to be married over 10 years ago, and I have a daughter who's about to turn 14. And she came out to me over a year ago. She said, "Well, Dad, I'm starting to date." And I told her at the time, like, "Well, I didn't start dating until I was 14, and you're younger than that. You're only 13, and it's too young." And but she said, "Well, I like women too." And so we had some more conversation. But a couple months after that, it went to liking both boys and girls to, well, I don't like my birth name anymore. I don't want to use the name Crystal. I want to change it to Phoenix, which is what they call gender neutral. But I demanded to know, who brainwashed you with this ideology? What teacher or counselor told you? And to this day, refuses to tell me who brainwashed her. And it's very unfortunate because parents are being placed in the dark. It's very real. And my daughter does live in Carroll County, Maryland, with my ex-wife. But Maryland's a terrible state. And Michele, Blair, has dealt with the brunt of Maryland in the court system. And she's going to go more into her story and how they are anti-parent. Now, fortunately, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we still do have the fundamental rights of parents. As long as we keep the Republicans in, if we can flip the Senate, we're going to strengthen parental rights by passing Sage's Law, by making sure that parents are informed at every point if there are mental concerns with your child, if your child's choosing to go by a different pronoun versus their biological one, if they're changing their name. There's no way that a child should have one name or one gender ideology in school and then have another one at home with their parents. Parents should never be left in the dark, period. It should be against the law. And I want to invite a couple of the candidates to come up to the stage. And first, let me invite the school board candidate up. Miss Cooley, right? Cool. Okay. And thank you for being here today.
evening, everyone. Thank you, Philip, for inviting me up. I will tell you that I have read through Sage's Law and fully support that. Love hearing about what Rachel is doing with her organization. And this is something, too, that is very near and dear to me. I am a Christian. I'm a follower of Christ, and I believe that God does not make mistakes with our gender. He creates us for who we are, and we all have a purpose to serve, and we cannot confuse our children about that. I also fully support Governor Younger's model policies, that talk about having parental rights in regards to, parents knowing what's going on in their schools. And I don't think that teachers or counselors or anyone has a right to tell someone that they should think about changing their gender. That's absolutely just beyond understanding for me. It just should not happen. That is a conversation that should be happening within the home, and parents should have the right to treat their kids in a way that allows them to be able to guide that decision with their faith and their religion. So again, I want to thank you. I'm running for school board for the Monroe, Pleasant View, and Elon District, District 3, and would love your support. Thank you so much.
All right, next I'd like to invite the candidate for sheriff up to the stage. And our sheriffs are very important. They are enforcing the law locally here in this county. Welcome.
Thank you all. To sit back and think where our nation is going, we need to be thinking about transgender, our children in school, our parents not having the ability to know what is going on with their children, and the discussions between counselors, teachers, or whoever it may be in school. I find this absolutely appalling. I am a God-fearing man, have lived on my faith, and leaned on my faith many times in my 30-year career of law enforcement. Have dealt with many children in many, many different situations, and a lot of those are truly tragic. I'll just leave it at that. But to think that we have reached a time in history that our kids can go to school and then try to identify as another gender than how they were created by God, and the school system can withhold that from our parents or their parents. I think about my two as I was sitting back there. They're both grown now, and Jamie and Jordan come along. If that had happened to me and Nancy, how we would have reacted if, realized that discussion was taking place at school and we had no knowledge of it. It's hard to say what I would have done. I just be flat honest with you. But Rachel and Philip, I appreciate the mission that you are on, and I support you 100% because I think it's our right as parents to know what our kids are doing, how they're feeling, to work with them, also to have discussions with the school personnel, and I just, as I said, I just find it appalling that we have reached this point and are even having to have this discussion, but obviously we are, and I stand firm in support of our children being as they are created, and the parents doing the best they can to raise them. I support that 100%. It's the school's decision, nor the court's decision to tell a parent what to do unless it's abuse or something. I think the parent works with the appropriate people and organizations to do the best they can do for those children. And I can assure you, if elected again as sheriff of this county, I will continue to do that and stand firm on my beliefs and such. Thank you all for having me tonight.
Thank you again. And where I live in Charlottesville, it is a completely different ballpark up there. I mean, there are police officers and Kansas sheriff who are very left-leaning, They support defunding the police movement. So thank God in Amherst County, we have a conservative majority down here, and defund the police will not prevail here in this county. Well, let's go back to Sage's Law, and I want to read what it is verbatim. So HB 2432, which came out earlier this year. So Sage's Law is minor students experiencing gender incongruence, parental notification of certain expressions and requests, and parental permission for certain plans required. Parental care. So it requires each public elementary or secondary school principal or his designee to, as soon as practicable, inform at least one parent of a minor student enrolled in such school if such minor expresses to any individual who is employed in such school that such minor is experiencing gender incongruence as defined in the bill, or request that any such employee participate in social affirmation of such minor's gender incongruence, or the transition of such minor to a sex or gender different from the minor's biological sex while at school, and request and receive permission from at least one parent, it's a crucial part, of a minor student enrolled at such school prior to the implementation at such school of any plan concerning any gender incongruence experienced by such minor, including any counseling of such minor at school. So any such plan shall include provision for parental participation to the extent requested by the parent. The bill also clarifies the definition of the term abused or neglected child that is no evident shall referring to in raising the child in a manner consistent with the child's biological sex, including related mental health or medical decisions, be considered abuse or neglect. So this is all talking about parental consent. Parents having the right to know what's going on. And I have a friend of mine, Aline Roberts. She founded an organization called Parents for Life. And what compelled her to start this specific organization in the 1980s was because her daughter, at the age of 14, got an abortion without her consent. And this, whole idea of parents don't need to know what's going on with their children, it's not a very recent phenomenon. This has been going on for decades. We go back to the 80s and find evidence of this. And she's still fighting. She's been meeting with Governor Youngkin. She's been meeting with members of the Virginia General Assembly on the House of Delegates and the Senate side, fighting for pro-life bills. And it's because of what happened to her daughter. And she said that no parent should experience the loss of a grandchild because an abortion is performed on a minor without the consent. So this debate goes in the many realms. So I want to remind everyone of that. But Michele, Blair, and I, we actually met recently at the Appomattox County Republican Committee meeting. And thank God I was able to meet you there. I had a couple other meetings in Nelson County that night, but I made it a priority to see you that evening. Because it's nothing like meeting someone in person versus a phone call. But she was very happy to hear what I had to say about my support for this law. And if we get deeds out this November, I will be one additional vote in the Senate to get this passed. And earlier this year, Sage's Law did actually pass in the Virginia House of Delegates. But what happened is that the Health and Education Committee, the Democrats within the committee voted against it going on a floor vote. So they wanted to pass it indefinitely, which means if you don't vote on it again before the General Assembly session ends, the bill dies. And that's what happened. Now, Senator Mark Peake, who's local to this area, he's from the area, we did a fundraiser a couple months ago. He was actually on the committee, and he voted for Sage's Law. I was actually hoping he'd be here tonight, but next time I have an event with him, we'll definitely be talking about what happened specifically in the committee from that senator. But I want to bring Michele onto the stage, and you're welcome to speak 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Tell us the full story. because this is being live streamed and folks who are watching at home, we want to know what happened and what you can do to pass Sage's Law in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 2024. Let's give a hand for Michele.
Testing, testing. Can you hear me better now? A little bit now? Right there? Yep. I'm ready. Thank you for being here. I am Michele Blair. I am the mother and the grandmother of Sage Blair. I adopted Sage when she was just shy of 2 years old. She came from a tragic beginning, but she's now 16 and she's a survivor of sex trafficking. Hers is a tragic story, and it's nothing short of a miracle. She's alive, and I'm grateful because God was in the details. When Sage was 13 years old, she began to question who she was. Puberty and COVID hit hard, and her mental health began to decline. I had a handle on it until she began her first day of 9th grade at Appomattox High School. Sage decided to identify as a boy only because she thought it would help her find friends. Instead, the attention she received harmed her greatly due to the actions of the school staff. What happened to my daughter could easily have been avoided had her school simply been honest with me. Instead, they glorified her boy identity and kept it a secret from me. They encouraged my daughter to break the one rule I taught her: do not lie to me. Instead, they taught my daughter how to lie and how to deceive me. These schools lie by omission, by not advising me that they were calling my daughter a boy's name is deceitful. And why in the world was I not informed by the school that my daughter was in danger due to her new gender identity? Such a horrible decision that almost cost Sage her life. And why? To support a dangerous fad that has become a social contagion at the risk of children's lives? Her school teachers and counselors never told me that Sage was identifying as a boy. They never even bothered to request a parents' meeting. This school had me sign an authorization to give her Tylenol, yet they believed it was okay to let her use the boys' bathroom without my knowledge or authorization. It defies common sense. It truly does. To make matters worse, one counselor gave her 2 transgender sites so she could chat and make new friends on them. I had no idea. How many more secrets did they keep from me? Like they never told me she was being threatened with physical harm, including rape. They never told me she was being horribly bullied, not only at school, but on the bus until it was too late. Sage ran away because she felt unsafe at school, not at home. My beautiful daughter ran right into the hands of a sex trafficker. At only 14 years old, my daughter lost her innocence. Sage was gone 344 days because when the FBI found her 9 days later in Maryland, they refused to return her and investigated me and my husband for abuse because we used the wrong pronouns. But Sage is home now. She is safe. She's working through her lifetime sentence of PTSD with a therapist who is honest with me. There are no secrets, there are no lies, there is no deceit. Recently I asked Sage what she would want other kids to know about her experience. Sage said, and I quote, "Before I knew it, Nana, I was struggling with my mental health, and it led me down a dark road. Those days I was confused. I didn't know who I could believe. And many people took advantage of the vulnerable state I was in. The most horrific things happened without warning and caught me by surprise. In the midst of all the danger, I felt alone and hopeless. At times, I wouldn't make it out alive, and I thought that I would never get back to safety. The reason why getting groomed and kidnapped isn't fun is because you will get tortured, mentally and physically. You could potentially be killed if you don't want to kill yourself by then. Rumors do not care about you. They will hurt you. Sage's words are real. Our teens and preteen kids need to hear her because our schools are not telling them. These kids are living through one of the most vulnerable stages of life, puberty. They need space to figure out things without all these school celebrations that convince them it is so much more fun to be trans than to do the hard work of facing their issues that are part of growing up. It's not easy, and it never has been. And for our teachers to feel they are entitled to keep secrets and suggest life-changing medication to children that have permanent consequences, it's wrong. It's just wrong. They're kids. They can't even balance a checkbook, never mind their mental health. Their brains aren't even done developing. They change their minds every time the wind blows. It's a part of life. Ask a child what they want to be when they grow up. How many times do they change their mind on that question? This is why schools have no business discussing gender with our children. It is a parent's job to guide our kids through these stages, not the school staff. I am not here to tell you how to raise your kids. I'm here to tell you we should not be placing adult decisions on children, and especially not behind a parent's back. These kids are trying to grow up in a world where sex traffickers are lurking on every cell phone, just waiting to trick your child into their sick game. It is a fact that trans kids sell for more money on the black market. Right now, there are thousands of missing children in the hands of traffickers, and not because of their parents. They are not honest with parents. Our innocent children will be led down the same road they led Sage down. We all need to heed Sage's words before it's too late. We need schools to communicate with parents. There is absolutely no way that any school staff would know our child better than a parent. Schools need to respect our parental rights. If a school has knowledge of a child identifying as anyone other than what is on their school record, please advise a legal guardian. Because if you don't, you may become the reason a child falls into a dangerous and life-threatening situation, just as my daughter did. Which is exactly why we need Sage's Law. I have heard from families all over the state and the country that have been torn apart by schools and court systems that, unlike parents, do not have a child's best interest at heart, but are driven by ideology. Parents are trying to speak up on what is happening to our children, but society keeps trying to silence our voices, not just here in Virginia, but all over the world. If you don't think this could happen to your child, think again. I am a mom whose top priority is the safety of my daughter, yet she slipped right through the cracks because of the school's decision to keep me in the dark, a decision that almost killed Sage. We must be the voice of reason for our children. We must save our children before it's too late. To lose one more child to the fate that Sage suffered is just too much. I intend to stand strong for children. Society may win a few battles, but they will not win the war because parents have only begun to fight. I believe in God, and I'm so grateful since it's my faith and the grace of God was the only thing that kept me from going mad when my child was missing. Ephesians 6:13, therefore, take up the whole armor of God, and that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, stand. Thank you.
Let's give her another round of applause. Michele, this is actually the binder that Delegate Rock actually filed for Sage's law. And this has Sage's picture on it. So this is who Michele is fighting for her and all the other Virginia children that must be protected from these sexual traffickers. Now, who here, raise your hand if you've seen The Sound of Freedom before. Excellent movie. And you know, I've had some folks who told me, well, sexual trafficking, that's occurring overseas. Well, they're wrong. It is occurring here, not just in America, but it's occurring here in Virginia. And we must take a stand against these sexual traffickers and make it as hard as possible for these folks to kidnap our children. And Sage was not sexually trafficked just once, but twice. And what's fascinating is that when she went, Michele went to Maryland to see Sage, she had to wait 7 hours. I repeat that again, 7 hours before she could even see her in the courthouse. And it was on Zoom. So she didn't get to see her in person, it was on Zoom. And it's because they didn't use the right pronouns for Sage. They didn't address her by her male name. They said, well, this is parental abuse. And this is what they're doing in Maryland. And don't think that this cannot happen here in Virginia. If we let the Democrats take over, that's what our judicial system is going to start looking like over here. So that's the reason why we fight. Thank you again. Thomas Jefferson, he once said that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And that is absolutely true. You know, and I praise God that I live in Charlottesville. Now, do I wish it had a more conservative tilt up there? Absolutely. But I live 10 minutes from Monticello. And every year on the 4th of July, we welcome new immigrants. They swear allegiance to the United States on the lawn of our third president of the United States. And Thomas Jefferson was a godsend to our nation. There was a lot of good that he brought forth. And we need to respect his wisdom and of our other presidents, George Washington and many others. I'm a proud descendant of George Mason IV on my mother's side of the family. And he wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which guaranteed the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of religion, which not all countries respect. You look at North Korea, you look at China, you look at other nations, they don't respect the freedom of religion. The former Soviet Union that was pushing atheism down the throats of individuals after the Bolshevik Revolution in the early 1900s. But right now, there's very much an anti-Christian movement in this nation. And the founding fathers, they built our Constitution, they built our founding documents based on Judeo-Christian values. Now, I certainly respect the separation of church and state. We should not have what the Church of England had, having a sanctioned church. No, absolutely not. You're free to choose a religion. But we should not be taking God out of the public sphere. If people want to pray in public, they should absolutely be allowed to. And as Christians, we need to continue to fight. We need to continue to stand up for these values. And eternal vigilance. We must continue the fight. Even, I'm an underdog in this race. I'm going against an incumbent senator who's been in the Senate for 22 years. And even before that, he served 9 years in the Virginia House of Delegates. And he's been up there for over 31 years. And I believe in term limits. I think that we should explore 20-year term limits so folks, they don't occupy the same seat for over 2 decades. I think 2 decades is long enough. And we can do that by amending the Constitution of Virginia. And also support the Article 5 Convention, so we have term limits on Congress, on members of the Supreme Court, and others. So these are some of the various issues that I support. But going back to The Sound of Freedom, and some of my thoughts on that film, Tim Ballard is a hero, without a doubt. He did a lot for those children. It was interesting because the movie was about 3 hours long, but there were things in the film that were not actually mentioned. There were 2 operations that went on. The movie went over the anti-sexual trafficking operations that took place in Colombia, but there was another operation in Haiti that took place. So it took place in 2 different countries. And an interesting fact is, Tim Ballard, he worked for the CIA, but under the Bush administration, the Department of Homeland Security was created. So he transitioned from the CIA to that department. He had a discussion with his wife, and she said that her salvation would be in jeopardy if he didn't rescue those children from the sexual traffickers. He had the know-how to do it, he had the ability to do it, and God empowered that couple to take action. And another thing the movie didn't mention is that Glenn Beck actually financed the operations. In the original script for that film, they did mention that. For whatever reason, they took that out of the film. But I think it's important for people to know that if not for Glenn Beck, Tim Ballard would not have had the money to go and save those kids. And for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I highly encourage you to see it. I hope there's more movies like that come out from the Angel Studios and other such productions, because that story needs to be told. And who knows? I mean, if a movie is made about Sage or about any other Virginian, about their plight in the sexual trafficking world, those stories have to be told. But there is no movie about Sage, but it's up to us as conservative activists to tell her story, to let others know that this has happened. We're not going to forget about what happened, and we will continue to fight for Sage in the 2024 General Assembly session. And I wanted to thank you all for being here today. Please go to hamiltonforvasenate.com to check out my website. You go to Hamilton for Virginia Senate, a Facebook page. Twitter is Hamilton for VA. I'm also on Truth Social, Instagram, Hamilton for Virginia. But God willing, we will win the seat and be back here at the same exact location on August 22nd. We're going to have Dr. Sheila Fury. She's the president of the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance. She will be speaking here at this venue for the fundraiser. And the last thing I'll know about that is that there was a federal court case in Charlottesville, and over 1,000 people were fired for not getting the mRNA injection for COVID. And over 400 of them did not injection for COVID. And over 400 of them were fired because they were not granted a religious exemption. And UVA Health, what they did is that in 2021, they had a list of churches that they deemed as anti-vaccine churches. I haven't seen this list yet, but this is what I saw in the court testimony last month. There was over 6 hours worth. But they had 6 attorneys representing UVA Health, 5 representing the class action lawsuit. But some of the folks, they got exemptions for the flu vaccine, but one of them was denied the COVID religious exemption 4 times, and there were various other ones. There were Baptists, Episcopalian, and other denominations who were denied religious exemption. And the plaintiffs were arguing that this is a violation of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. You have people who are being discriminated against based on their Christian and other religious beliefs. So be mindful of that. We're going to talk more about that issue on the 22nd. But thank you all. God bless you all, and God bless America. That was great. Yes. Yes.
All right. We'll end the live stream here. Thank you to anybody watching, and please like it, share it, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Yes. See you again.